intro about who you are, where you're based, where you're a councillor, all of that good stuff.
Well, I'm councillor Ruairi Kelly. I'm a councillor for the North East Ward in Glasgow, and I'm our city convener for Neighbourhood Services and Assets.
What drew you to this role? What do you like about it? What's your kind of history of being a councillor? Can you kind of walk me through a little bit of that?
Yeah, so I was first elected in 2017 and chaired our contracts and property committee, so dealt with all of the procurement, land buying, selling, and all of the contracts that the council would have got into. And then whenever I was re-elected in 2022, I was asked to take on the role of our city convener for neighbourhood services and assets. So that includes cleansing, so bins, street cleaning, all of our roads, lighting, parks, and then managing all of the assets, so building, land, everything else that the council owns. So a lot of the kind of practical stuff that people would think of as the day-to-day bread and butter of the council, everything that people basically complain about is what comes under my responsibility. So I wanted to take on that sort of stuff. I like the practical side of it. I enjoy kind of my background was in health and safety and construction, so kind of used to you know dealing with that side of things, targets, costs, etc. And it's the stuff that I think has suffered the most in the last decade or so with the austerity that councils and governments in Scotland and everywhere has been faced with. That those things that aren't your statutory legal duties to carry out tend to be the ones that have obviously taken the biggest hit, but they're also the things that people see most on a day-to-day basis, and the things that make people feel like their towns and cities are maybe not looking as well as they once did, or that there's not as much care and attention paid to them. And while it's definitely not the case that there's not as much care, it's just that there's not as much money going around. So I was very keen to take on a role where I was able to use some past experience to work with our teams and ensure that we're getting the best value for money and that driving a modernisation agenda through our services, because like any big organisation, the councils find it difficult to change. You've got lots of people, you've got lots of working for you, you've got lots of people relying on services, and you can't just stop doing something while you change how you do it. So there's been a bit of a resistance and hesitance to change, but we needed to move services out of the 20th century and into the 21st century, really. So I was quite keen to be part of that, and I've really enjoyed that so far. It's not been without its challenges, obviously, but I think we're kind of making good headway.
That's super interesting. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was like the challenges in particular, which it sounds like those are two really the money piece, always such a challenge. But also this kind of idea that you're trying to innovate while also delivering that service. And that's kind of a uniquely, that's a unique challenge probably. Are there any things that you're working on now that you're like really excited about bringing as far as innovation goes to to the services that you're currently providing?
Yeah, so one of our big projects at the minute is to, as I say, modernise how we deliver cleansing, so bin and waste collection in the city. Glasgow, you would think, should have one of the lower cost per head of population because of economies of scale, but we've actually got some of the highest costs per head of population in the country because of the way we deliver the service. So because it's mostly tenemented and platted properties, the bins are kept through the back, but instead of residents bringing them out, our guys go in. It's mostly guys, so there's a few women that empty bins, but it's mostly guys. So they go in and take them out, and that takes a lot of time. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of physical strain on the workforce as well. So with people just create more rubbish now than they used to. There's far more products coming in packaging, everything getting delivered. There's just a huge deal more waste created. So while it might not be a great physical, task to take one bin out, if you're on a run that has 1,000 or more bins on it, and you're doing that 4 days on and 4 days off, that has an impact on your physical well-being. So we've been looking at how we address that, and what we're doing is putting on-street bin hubs. So these will be purpose-built structures that larger bins will go into, to really take away the need for our guys to go in and out of the back courts. So it speeds things up, makes it much more efficient for us emptying, means that there's much fewer, far fewer missed collections, because we don't need to ring buzzers to get in. We're not waking people up at 7 o'clock on a Sunday banging bins through their closes. And the more that we can save in those things, the more money then we have to spend on street cleaning, on parks, on it, and everything else that people want to see us doing better. So that's a big project. We've had pilots in a couple of different areas that are going really well, and we're looking to expand that to, over the next couple of years, to the vast majority of our flatted and tenanted properties, and that will be the biggest change probably in bin collection in Glasgow for generations, really.
All right, so we kind of talked about some of these really challenging parts. The financial piece, the innovation, kind of that physicality of the work that has to be done, bringing more modernizing it. Are there anything else as far as like the most challenging or most rewarding parts of being a councillor, or being in these roles, that you would highlight? I think that's something this year we're really kind of trying to hone in on, is like the challenges and the rewarding bits as well, both.
Yeah, I mean, the most challenging bit every year is the financial aspect of setting the budget. Every year that I've been a councillor, and for a number of years before, it's been about quite often savings. Whenever you're in somewhere like Glasgow with such a large budget, those savings are millions and millions of pounds. So at times it can feel like you're picking the least worst option, as opposed to doing all of the positive things that you want to be doing. But I mean, we're bringing forward options this year that are going to save money but also improve services. So I've got options drawn up now for replacing all of the street lighting with LEDs. So that's going to save millions of pounds a year, and help us get our net zero targets.
That's
But
so
it's
cool.
also going to reduce the amount of lights that are out, because the LEDs have a 10-year lifespan compared to the sodium lamps. So things like that
And
are.
are they brighter as well? Do they help with safety at all, or is that?
So they're brighter when they're more focused on
Yeah,
where sort of light, so you don't get the same light pollution kind of around
less
them
light
in
pollution?
the
Yeah.
housing, but you do have brighter streets that should help
Hmm.
with the sort of feeling of safety whenever people are out and
Yeah,
about.
that's something that in our borough has been sort of a movement for women as well. That
Mhm.
kind of that.
So we've been doing a bit of work with a campaign called Light the Way in Glasgow, around lighting in parks as well, because one of the things that's
Yes,
come back around how people feel, the perception of safety within parks, especially kind of in the winter months where it can be dark from
it
4
can be
o'clock.
dark for so long.
Yeah. So we've got kind of pathfinder lights on some of the paths. We're looking at sort of standalone solar lights and trialing them in a number of areas, with the idea of rolling them out to ensure that play parks are available for young people and families, that you can kind of see the path through the parks and kind of know how far you are to the end, all of the rest of that. But while trying to kind of maintain the parks as a nature reserve, and being cognizant of nocturnal animals and all of the other.
Multi-use, bouncing
Yeah.
all the. Yeah.
So it's trying to get that balance where you're ensuring that it's accessible to the public and that people feel safe to use it, but also making sure that we're being cognizant of the fact that we do have ecological problems across the country. We've got loss of habitat, biodiversity, and it's really important to maintain those spaces within cities as well.
When we talk about advice, um, do you have any advice that you would give to young counselors who are wanting to kind of start getting into, serving in their communities, or maybe they're not a counselor yet, but they're interested in being a counselor? Yeah, just any kind of good advice that either you maybe like the advice that you've heard, that you've used, or just something you've kind of thought of through your experiences.
I mean, definitely in terms of work within communities, getting close to community organisations there, because they will have an absolute wealth of knowledge that
Mhm.
you're never going to be able to generate or create yourself or understand unless you've grown up and lived in that place, and you're not going to be able to have done that in all of your communities and all of your ward across the
Yeah.
area you represent. So having good working relationships with them so that they can keep you right in terms of what the communities want and need, and as I say, listening to what people are feeding back and what they want, but then at the same time being decisive about your decision making and what you then want to deliver, because public sector and councils especially can be really slow to do anything. There's a lot of consultation, different managers it has to go through, different departments, when funding opportunities can be, brought to bear, that things can take a very long time to do. So the more decisive and forthright you can be once that decision's sort of been arrived at, I think that that's really important. Otherwise, you can see projects take much longer than they need to. And unless you're in the organisation, the public don't really understand how or why it would take so long to do these
Mhm.
things. It can be very frustrating for them. So to maintain those good relationships and the trust, you
Mm.
need to be able to deliver on the things that you've told people you're going to do. So yeah, being honest with people about what's possible and deliverable as well, I would say is really important for councillors, because there's so little trust in politics at the minute that the worst thing we can really do is promise people the world and then deliver nothing. If something's just not feasible within the funding and the budgets you have, don't tell people you're definitely going to do it. So yeah, being honest with people about what's deliverable, but making sure that whenever they feed stuff back to you, that then you're doing your best to deliver on it as quickly
Mhm.
as you
Absolutely. Well, this has been lovely. As we close, as we do kind of wrap it up, um, is there something, I know we've kind of talked about like a lot of exciting projects that you have coming down the road. But is there something in particular that we haven't talked about that you are excited about, hopeful for, looking forward to kind of in 2024?
Yeah, so the one of the big projects I've been working on that I haven't mentioned is the People Make Glasgow's Communities, and that's where we're working through our the Community Empowerment Act and what that sort of compels us to do, but in a way that enables us to facilitate the transfer of community assets or community centres, football pitches and stuff to community organisations based locally. Obviously, after the pandemic and the ongoing sort of financial issues, the council just doesn't have the money and resources, and quite often it doesn't have the local expertise and knowledge to deliver it on the ground in those places. So we've been working with community groups to take on these assets, to run them themselves. They can get funding that the council can't access, and there's been really, really positive outcomes of that, where we've got community centres up and running that have been closed for years. We've got millions of pounds
That's
of investment in
amazing.
football pitches that had been underdeveloped. And it's been a real sort of good example of
Yeah.
community empowerment, because it's also
Empowerment,
created
exactly what I
jobs
was
locally.
thinking.
It's created those jobs locally, and the people then have more of a stake in where they live. That this is mine, I own this, we run this facility, and we are responsible for it. And they've obviously got the support from the council in the background, helping with facility management and things like that. But in terms of the power and the decision making, that's based within the community, and it's been really, really positive. So I'm excited to see how we continue to develop that.